imagine a senior vice president in Toys R Us called Andy. And Andy every day is getting inundated with letters from eager customers, parents, and amateur innovators with ideas for new toys. And he doesn't know what to do with this. He just shelves them. He doesn't actually pay any attention to them. Enter innovator. He sets up the Big Idea Group in 2000 and essentially provides a marketplace, a way for people to submit these ideas to a website, to send them in, to have them judged by a panel, to have the best ones go forward and possibly go through a process of conversion that follows the submission, and taking those products to market. And the big toy companies love it. The innovators get a chance to get their products to market quicker than they would themselves. Big Idea Group takes a good 50% of the value, so that they're actually adding quite a lot by creating this market. But it's enabling innovators to do things that they wouldn't otherwise be able to do, and they then rolled it out across a similar industry, the home gardening, something like that, the gardening equipment industry. So we kind of approached this first of all by trying to think about how we'd enhance this particular innovation. And this is clearly a situation where there isn't a marketplace for innovation, or there's a broken marketplace, i.e. there's lots of supply but the demand isn't there, and you don't have a strong enough intermediary. And what that really led us to think about was how do we understand the aid innovation marketplace in that context? Who are the sellers? Who are the buyers? Who are the brokers? Do we have a clear sense of a marketplace in the way that it works in the toy industry? The other point that was highlighted was that the implementation of innovations in the toy company, or indeed in Procter & Gamble, the example that was given earlier, is a fairly short thing. You've got an idea, you put it to market, it fails or it succeeds, then you go back to the drawing board. In the aid industry, the implementation chain is much more long and complex. And simply having something vetted by a panel and approved by some panel sitting in Washington or Geneva or even Nairobi doesn't mean that you've got a viable alternative that will be implemented by all agencies that are working on a particular theme or a particular issue. So there's something about the implementation of innovations and that chain there. And we thought that there were three criteria that were actually quite important that we'd use to enhance this. You can have innovations around gaps in the existing aid delivery process, innovations around failures in the existing aid delivery process, and innovations around passion in the existing aid delivery process, what people really care about, what they're really committed to. There's a need to improve accessibility. I mean, they talked about bringing people together in hotels. That's clearly not going to work in the global development community. So maybe we thought about improving accessibility using a wisdom of crowds style approach and web-based polling and voting, so you can select and validate innovations. And related to that, the idea that this was really based on a model of a single innovator submitting an idea, but actually most of successful development innovations about co-creation. Maybe you could use web-based tools to enable co-creation and socialization of innovation. Now, some of the things that's on the enhancement side. On the creation side, well, we like the idea of a panel of judges, but as I said, we wanted to democratize that somehow. And maybe use multiple approaches for validating and trying out lots of different things before you get to the one that actually works. But the important thing is to do this in a way that provides incentives and, importantly, deadlines. We can all think of an idea that we've got that we'd love to be able to write up. We've never had a deadline on it, so it's been sitting there in the back of our minds for the last 10 years. Similarly, it might be about the selection of the panel that incentivise sharing, that incentivise capturing of ideas, that maybe offer the kudos, maybe offer people a small cash grant. It doesn't have to be a huge thing, it just needs to get people, trigger people to do things. And we thought particularly important was to draw on non-traditional sources of innovation. The huge number of freelance consultants that have ideas in their heads. They're the equivalent of the Toys R Us customers that have got lots of ideas but no real opportunity to put them forward. National NGOs, community-based organisations, diasporas in developed countries. We came up with all of these different ideas. We also thought that it was important to think about categories of products. That in development side of things, you have very few tangible products like soap or a Nintendo Wii. But maybe in humanitarian assistance you do have some tangible products, but there are also innovations that can be made around the delivery, around finance, around processes that support aid organisations work. They could have innovations in different themes. And there's also the idea of scope. You can have innovations that may have scope to be cross-country. Maybe they're things which are very specific to a particular regional situation. And then there's a whole set of things around elimination. There was a big piece around copyrights and patents and protecting the value that a particular toy or a particular gardening implement provided, and we would want to eliminate that. We would also want to eliminate broker profits. I don't see any gain in 50% of the value going to the intermediary in this situation. But there's also a need for perfection in this whole big idea, that you can take a product and you can push it through, even if it's partly formed, push it through and get it finalised and then put it out to market. But the development doesn't work like that. A drive for perfection may actually be slightly misplaced. There may be certain things which need to be permanently provisional. But maybe, something that's good enough is actually the way to go. And related to that, we maybe need to get away from the drive for conventional rigour in these kinds of processes. And that, again, feeds back to the idea of open innovation around collaboration. The more collaborative you are, arguably, the less rigorous you can be, the more open you have to be to new ideas. I think the final point on that is the prejudice against voice. We need to eliminate the prejudice against voice. If we were to set this up in the development community, then certain kinds of proposals written in certain kinds of language, using English or whatever language, in certain kinds of ways, are likely to be favoured over other ways of articulating themselves. And I think we need to really get beyond that in order to really make the most of this kind of tool as an innovative platform. I don't know if anyone's got anything to add.
Just one thing, even though we all come kind of from the development background, so we want to eliminate broker profits and we want to eliminate a lot of these things that are outside the language we're used to using, we also said that we need to explore those assumptions a little bit more, because maybe broker profits in 20 years is the mechanism that makes all these crazy ideas we have today work. So just not say that we're embracing all this language, nor assuming that a broker should be taking 50% of the funding, but also saying maybe that is part of the chain. We just don't know it enough, and we need to study it a little bit more and kind of recognize more where we're coming from as development actors before rejecting everything that's outside of our own speak, kind of.